Number 10. Tattoos at McDonald's. A man in South Carolina was arrested in 2021 for giving a child a tattoo in the middle of a McDonald's restaurant. Oh yes, this is really a thing that happened. It makes you wonder what people are thinking. Even more shocking is that somebody posted a video of it happening, which is the only reason the cops got involved at all. The tattoo artist who was brave enough to give an underage child ink in the middle of a McDonald's is Brandon Prescia, 28 years old. He's not only facing charges for tattooing a minor, but also for tattooing without a license. But if you thought that a person willing to tattoo a baby was a wholesome person who just made a mistake, think again. As it happens, Brandon was already on probation for assault and battery. He got sentenced back in December to spend 3 years in jail, but the sentence was reduced to 2 years of probation. Unfortunately for Brandon, the illegal tattoo almost certainly violates his probation, so he's probably going back to jail for that full 3 years. Number 9. The Baby Man. A man who looks like a baby and has numerous strange tattoos on his face was recently stopped in Two Rivers, Wisconsin and booked on his 5th DUI. You wouldn't believe it by looking at the photos, but this guy is actually 29 years old. Somehow he looks both 10 and 50 with a receding hairline and a baby face. His name is Corey P. Smits, and he was placed on probation for 3 years by Judge Patrick Willis. Maybe he took pity on the baby man and didn't give him any jail time. Considering this is his 5th DUI, a bit of probation probably isn't going to stop him from drinking and driving in the future. Honestly, he should probably be sent to prison for repeatedly endangering other people's lives. Police stopped him in the first place because he was swerving through a residential area. When the officers pulled him over, they found Corey had bloodshot eyes, he could barely walk, and he reeked of alcohol. And to make matters worse for himself, the baby man then became belligerent and needed to be pepper sprayed when he lashed out at the officers. That must have been a weird scene, the officers trying to arrest an aggressive baby-faced man with tattoos. Number 8. Redneck Rave. In Kentucky, a country music festival turned into a nightmare when the Edmonson County authorities had to descend on the Redneck Rave and arrest 14 people, with an additional 48 people being charged from 5 different states for various crimes. There was throat slashing, the use of drugs like crystal meth, and a whole lot of active warrants among the partygoers. The very first vehicle that police stopped going into the music festival contained both meth and marijuana, as well as an open bottle of alcohol. By the time the Redneck Rave ended after 5 days of crazy partying, one man had been impaled, a woman had been strangled almost to the point of death, and somebody had gotten their throat slit open. That's right. These are punishments that seem straight out of a medieval jousting match. But it's true, they actually happened, and in the United States. Apparently this is just the kind of thing that happens at Kentucky music festivals. The event was organized by the country rapper Just in Time, and no surprise, it was held at an off-road park. Tens of thousands of people showed up, there was a demolition derby, some concerts, and even a football game. The individual who cut their friend's throat open is still at large. Oh yeah, and somebody even lost a part of their finger. Should an event like this be legal? Should the police work to stop it from happening next time it's planned? What do you think? Tell us your ideas in the comments down below. Then remember to subscribe to World List if you haven't already for more intense videos just like this one. Number 7. Holly Boob. 6 people were arrested by police in Los Angeles for messing with the famous Hollywood sign. The prank involved changing the W and D on the sign so that they looked like the letter B. This turned the sign from Hollywood into Holly Boob. And while some people might think this is hilarious, the Los Angeles Police Department did not. According to the LA Times, 5 men and 1 woman were responsible for the prank, which they claim was to raise awareness for breast cancer. Also, the woman involved was Julia Rose, founder of the adult magazine Shag Mag, who wanted to get the attention of Instagram boss Adam Mosseri. Julia's angry because Instagram suspended her pages because of nudity, even though they hadn't suspended Playboy's Instagram pages when they were showing essentially the same thing. But in the end, nobody got through to any Instagram executives and the whole group was arrested. To be fair, this seems like a pretty harmless prank to raise awareness in my opinion, but what do you think? Number 6. Upset about tomatoes. A Florida woman has been arrested because of an angry outburst in a Burger King restaurant. According to the police, they were called to the Burger King at around 6 p.m. because a 77-year-old woman was upset over how thick her tomatoes were. In response to the unsatisfactory tomatoes, the woman threw her burger at the restaurant employee and called him a racial slur. Officers responded to the call and arrested Judith Ann Black just after she peeled away with her husband in a Ram pickup truck. Thankfully, surveillance video managed to get the license plate on the pickup, which the police used to track her down. They then matched her driver's license photo to the video from inside the restaurant. Ann may have gotten away with a warning if it hadn't been for the racial slur. Police said that the verbal prejudice actually enhanced the misdemeanor charge to a felony charge. This angry woman could now be facing jail time, and all over some tomato slices. Number 5. Stealing a gator. And yes, just in the nick of time, here's a story about another crazy person from Florida. This time, a man has been accused of stealing an alligator from a golf course and then later trying to flood his holding cell. The crazy man's name is William Hodge, and he did more than just steal the alligator. He took it from a miniature golf course, swung it around by its tail, and tried to throw it onto the roof of a building. When questioned by the police, William said he was doing it to teach the reptile a lesson. He neglected to mention what lesson that was exactly, but it was a pretty nasty scene of animal cruelty. Once William was taken into a holding cell, he filled the toilet with paper so that it flooded and drained onto the floor, threatening to flood the entire station. That's right, he was already in jail, and then he thought it would be a good idea to try to cause damage to the police station. He was ultimately charged with animal cruelty, injuring an alligator, burglary, and criminal mischief. As for the unfortunate alligator, it's since been returned to its home at Congo River Gulf. Number 4. Mean review. A woman was arrested in Australia and ordered by the Supreme Court to pay over $370,000 in damages for posting a review on Google. Did you even think that was possible? A fine for a fraudulent, nasty review. How about that? Cynthia Emisides went to get some surgery done on her nose and cheeks by the cosmetic plastic surgeon Dr. Karush Tavakoli. After the operation, Cynthia lied to her husband by telling him that the doctor had not completed one of the procedures. She then complained in a Google review that the doctor had not performed the operation as he should have when she knew this was a lie. Court documents claim that within just 1 week of the negative review going up, the doctor's traffic dropped by 23%. No one knows exactly why the woman first lied to her husband, but she probably made the fake review to keep up the original lie. It ended up costing her almost $400,000, as she was ordered to pay the doctor in damages for defamation. In other words, don't leave reviews on Google if they aren't true. Number 3. Voting illegally. Here's a criminal who was actually a hero. This is one arrest that was part of a historically significant event, and nowadays people look back on it as one of the many times that a person stood up for their rights in the face of an unjust law. Susan B. Anthony voted in the 1872 presidential election. She did this in her hometown of Rochester, New York. Before voting, Susan had spent 50 years of her life dedicated to women's suffrage, their right to vote. When she cast her ballot, she knew she was going to be in some seriously hot water. She was only able to do it thanks to 3 male accomplices who registered her as a voter and accepted her ballot on Election Day. Almost immediately after she voted, police arrested her, they indicted her, they gave her a trial, and they convicted her of voting illegally. During the court hearing, Susan described the situation as the greatest judicial outrage history has ever recorded. The men in the courtroom didn't really care, and they sentenced her to pay a hefty fine of $100. Women being unable to vote continued after Susan for another 50 years. It wasn't until August 18, 1920 that the 19th Amendment became part of the Constitution, giving both men and women the right to vote for their leaders. This was exactly 101 years before today. Number 2. Farting with intent. This guy is no hero, but some people might think he deserves an award at least. An Austrian man was arrested and charged roughly $500 when he farted at a police officer. Police in Vienna didn't think it was very funny when the Austrian tourist broke wind loudly and intentionally directly in front of them. But just what kind of legal case is this? Is it illegal to fart in front of a cop? The police answered this question in a tweet, saying that of course nobody's going to get in trouble for accidentally farting. However, the Austrian man allegedly behaved provocatively with his fart. He was uncooperative with the police and then farted when he felt threatened. Maybe it was just a defense mechanism. Then again, maybe he did do it on purpose. In either situation, it's not as if the police were in danger. But still, they described him as letting go of a massive intestinal wind with full intent. The police also admitted that they don't like to be farted at. They charged the unruly gas passer with public indecency and made him pay a significant fine, hopefully dissuading him from any further aggressive flatulent antics in the future. Number 1. Guns at Disney. Since the beginning of 2020, over 30 people have been arrested for bringing firearms into Disney World. As of the time of this video, that's less than 2 years. And apparently it's getting worse. According to a report from the Orlando Sentinel, more and more people are bringing guns into Disney World each year, turning the happiest place on Earth into one of the more dangerous places on Earth. These people don't get arrested because they're allowed to wear their guns anywhere underneath their clothes. Disney World's strict policy against guns doesn't really stop these individuals from doing what they want. But just why on earth are so many people being arrested for carrying their guns into Disney World? Insider reported that it's been a result of the pandemic and political unrest. It may also have to do with a general unwinding of society and unraveling of people's mental states. To give you an idea of how alarming this is, only 4 such arrests were made in 2016. The amount of people walking into Disney World with handguns and other firearms tucked under their clothes has skyrocketed. To give you an example, a man was busted in October of 2020 for bringing an AR-15 and a handgun into the resort where he was staying at Disney World. When asked why he would do such a thing, he said he was scared for the safety of his family. Let that sink in. Scared for the safety of his family at Disney World.
10. Streaking the Super Bowl. In 2020, security personnel at the Super Bowl had to tackle a woman as she charged the field in Miami and tried to expose herself. The woman was escorted away after a brief altercation with the security guards. But even as she was being pulled off the field, she lifted up her dress and tried to show herself off to the crowd of spectators. As it turns out, the attempted streaker was Kelly Kay, an amateur Instagram model. Kelly even posted a photograph of herself being escorted off the field on her Instagram. With a rather bizarre caption, she labeled the photo, "Do what you want, when you want. Life's too short to have regrets." But is that really the way people are out there living their lives, streaking across football fields and being tackled by security guards? Or is that just for the seemingly untouchable Instagram models who do whatever they feel like and appear to get away with it? So far as we know, Kelly hasn't actually gotten in any trouble for creating the disruption at the game. She's also been linked to other Instagram accounts responsible for streaking and flashing incidents at other sporting venues. It looks like Kelly and her friends are a bunch of serial flashers. 9. Too topless for her own good. A popular model in Russia named Natalia Borodina was showing off her goods while on vacation in the Dominican Republic when disaster struck. The 35-year-old internet star was hanging outside the window of a speeding car in the Dominican, completely topless, while another individual in the car filmed her using a cell phone. Obviously, Natalia had never seen the movie Hereditary. From out of nowhere, a pole appeared on the side of the road and bounced off her head. She cracked her skull so hard that her head nearly separated from her body. It was actually a lamppost, and it's a little bizarre that she didn't see it coming. After all, she had half her body out the window. She was wearing nothing except bikini bottoms, but she was screaming and whooping and just having too good of a time to look out for street lamps. The video taken from inside the car was actually online for a bit. Near the end of the video, you can hear the driver screaming in terror as he realizes his naked friend has just gotten her brains knocked out of her head. She was rushed to the hospital immediately, but there was nothing the doctors could do to save her. The saddest part of it all is that she leaves behind an 8-year-old son who had allegedly been on holiday with her in the Dominican Republic. It's believed that she left the boy at home to go do some topless partying, and now the poor kid will never see his mother again. 8. Deadly pollen. A flowery photo shoot went terribly wrong when a girl on TikTok ended up dosing herself with extremely deadly pollen. Her name is Rafaela Wyman, a singer-songwriter with a small online following. She was making a video with some pretty yellow flowers that she and some friends found. In the video, she leaned in close and sniffed the sweet aroma from the flowers, which turned out to be devil's breath flowers, also known as yellow datura. She found them, innocently enough, in the Silver Lake area of Los Angeles. While they may look friendly enough, these flowers can actually be deadly. If you sniff their pollen, you might experience hallucinations, amnesia, sleep paralysis, and terrifying nightmares. But Wyman had no idea about this when she made the video. By the time she turned up to her friend's birthday party a few hours later, she felt so weird that she had to leave. That was when she started to realize the flowers she sniffed may just have been poisonous. That night, she experienced significant discomfort. It felt like she had taken way too many drugs. She couldn't sleep, and when she did, she had awful nightmares. After doing a bit of research the next day, Wyman learned that devil's breath flowers, also sometimes called angel's trumpet, contain scopolamine. This is a hallucinogen and narcotic that Vice News once described as the worst roofie times a million. Large doses can turn a person into a zombie, making them trip out, fall unconscious, and sometimes even die. 7. A steep fall. A popular social media celebrity from China recently took a bit of a tumble. Her name was CATWOMAN, and she was well known on a Chinese variant of TikTok called Douyin. She got famous by simply documenting her daily life as the operator of a crane at a construction site. But here's the deal. Apparently, she wasn't very good at her job. While filming herself working, she had a bit of an accident. She was filming a video inside the cabin of the crane when she got distracted, tumbled out of the door with her phone still clutched in her hand, and fell 160 feet, 49 meters, to the hard ground below. The impact of the internet model's face hitting the ground killed her pretty much instantly. Afterward, she was unrecognizable. But what went wrong during this particular day of work? The best that anyone can come up with is that she had been distracted by her phone. The fall was even captured live, with her fans shocked as they literally watched her fall to her death. And while this is definitely a great example of taking social media a little too far, it was still a tragic death. Chow was only 23 years old. When she wasn't working the crane, she loved dancing, for her internet fans, of course, and hanging out with her friends. 6. Naked and disorderly. In Florida, an Instagram model was arrested for trespassing at a hotel and attacking a police officer. To make matters worse for the internet star, she was naked during the whole ordeal, even when the police brought her into custody. This is Brisa Dominguez Garcia, and she was found at the Edge Hotel in Clearwater by the police early in the morning on July 5th. Hotel employees had complained about a disturbance, claiming that the model, who at the time had at least 70,000 Instagram followers, refused to leave the premises. Before taking her away, one of the officers gave her a towel to cover herself up with, but she refused. She then attacked the officer, hitting him in the face and trying to kick him while he stood behind her like an angry mule. Oh yeah, and she also tried to bite the guy. It's not clear exactly what she was doing at the hotel, though the police affidavit did say that she was under the influence of alcohol. The Mexican national is now facing charges of battery on a law enforcement officer, trespassing, and resisting with violence. But amazingly, she was released on bond less than 12 hours later and is still currently posting pictures on Instagram. 5. Too hot for Egypt. In Egypt, an Instagram model has been arrested for doing a photo shoot at the pyramids. Everyone who visits the pyramids does their own photo shoot one way or the other. But Instagram influencer Salma Al-Shima took things a little too far. Both she and her photographer, Hassam Mohammed, were arrested by the Egyptian authorities because they viewed the photo shoot as too risque. This to them was offensive. They charged the woman with taking photos without authorization at an archaeological site. But this wasn't really the problem, as everyone takes photographs at the archaeological sites in Egypt. What the authorities didn't like was that Salma was wearing a tight white dress that revealed quite a bit of skin and curves. But here's the deal. She knew exactly what she was doing. She actually walked into the site wearing a robe so that nobody would bother her. Then when they finally reached the Step Pyramid of Djoser, a pyramid 4,700 years old, she took the robe off and spiced things up. Since the incident, Salma has apologized, saying that she never intended to offend Egyptian culture. At the same time, Egyptian media denounced her basically as a provocative dirtbag. But this hasn't done anything except get her more followers, making Salma even more famous than she already was. 4. Naughty Catwoman. An Australian Instagram model known for posing as Catwoman was recently jailed after a series of crimes. She took her role as Catwoman a little too seriously, getting busted for the second time for masked robbery and shoplifting. The model's name is Monique Agostina, just 25 years old. The year before this most recent arrest, she had been warned by the Australian magistrate Jacqueline Millage that her life was, and I quote, going down the toilet. This was after she got busted for a different string of masked robberies. One of those robberies included using a chisel to break open the doors of a pizza restaurant, where she was caught red-handed by the surveillance video. She also tried breaking into a convenience store called House of Fruit and a cafe. But wait until you hear the rest. According to the New York Post, when she was convicted, she was charged with carrying a knife at a Target, for possessing crystal meth, and for stealing a jacket worth $90. This landed her 2 years in prison. You would think that such a good-looking model with a dedicated Instagram following wouldn't need to steal jackets or bring makeshift shivs into Target. 3. The Good Time Bandit. An Instagram model in Miami has gotten into some serious trouble for a string of dates gone horribly wrong. The 21-year-old model, named Yomna Fuad, got caught going out with men only to drug them and then steal all of their stuff. She got caught targeting men all along the East Coast, from New York to Miami. The charges include several counts of grand theft larceny. Last we heard, she was being held in jail without bail. Here's the story according to one of her victims. Back in March, the Instagram model approached an unnamed man outside a club in Miami Beach. She invited herself back to his place, where she offered him a massage and some drinks. But the next thing he knew, it was morning and she was gone. So was all of his stuff, including jewelry totaling over $32,000. Several months later, the victim spotted Yomna yet again standing outside of another club. He recognized her immediately, told the bouncer she was a thief, and they detained her until the police arrived and took her to jail. She has since been connected with a string of other robberies in which she roofied unsuspecting men who were hoping for a good time. 2. Rotting nose. Chinese internet sensation Gao Liu, a model, singer, and actress with over 5 million followers, recently shared with the online community how her nose rotted and fell off. As you may already know, there are all kinds of dangers associated with cosmetic surgery. Sometimes it's better just to leave your body the way it is, especially when trying to have a cuter nose results in having a disfigured face and looking kind of like a ghoul. The 24-year-old star went to get plastic surgery and ended up with recurring infections. She had the nose she wanted, only it had necrosis. What this means is that the tissue of her nose actually died. She had dead flesh on the end of her nose. The original operation called for removing cartilage from the nose to reshape it. It took about 4 hours, and Gao was hoping that it would improve her acting career. But it actually put a hold on all her careers, as she had to continuously get more and more surgeries to try and fix the problem. But it just kept getting infected, and she eventually learned that the hospital where she had the surgery performed wasn't even qualified to do nose operations. In the end, she had to be hospitalized for about 2 months and ended up spending more than $45,000 on reconstructive surgery. 1. Botched butt lift. Instagram model Jocelyn Cano, nicknamed the Mexican Kim Kardashian, has been killed by a botched butt lift surgery. Out of all the things to kill a person, a butt lift has got to be the most embarrassing. The young Instagram model was only 29 years old, originally from Newport Beach in California. She died on December 7th while getting surgery in Colombia. Jocelyn had acquired a staggering 10 million followers as a social media influencer, model, and fashion designer. She also allegedly studied microbiology at San Diego State University, but apparently photos in bikinis paid a whole lot more money. But what about the butt lift? No pun intended. It's actually referred to as a Brazilian butt lift procedure, in which fat is removed from other parts of the body and then installed in the buttocks. It's one of the fastest growing surgeries in the world, getting approximately 252% more popular from between 2000 and 2015. But Jocelyn isn't the only person to have been lost because of these dangerous surgeries. An estimated 1 out of 3,000 people who get this surgery end up dead. The biggest issue is that when injecting fat into the buttocks, sometimes you get a fat embolism. This is when fat finds a way into the bloodstream, blocking a blood vessel and ultimately causing death. While we don't know if that's exactly what happened to Jocelyn, it is the main cause of butt lift fatalities.
Number 10. Primal Instinct. It was September of 1999, and Gladys Reichart was preparing to have the wedding she had always dreamed of. She was engaged to James Preston, and the two were to be married at her home in Ridgefield, New Jersey. But her bridal party, what was supposed to be one of the best days of her life, turned into a horrifying bloodbath. Her ex-boyfriend, Agustin Garcia, showed up to the wedding party with a gun and opened fire on every person present. The police found out afterwards that Garcia had been stalking her ex for weeks, plotting his revenge for this very moment. To understand the motive in this horrifying case, we need to go back to New York City in 1992. This was when Gladys Reichart, originally from the Dominican Republic, bumped into Agustin Garcia, and the two hit it off immediately. They dated for 6 years, with Garcia even helping to buy his girlfriend a house. But what she really wanted was marriage, and Garcia was not interested in making the permanent commitment. Then it all fell apart when Garcia got busted cheating with another woman in his office at night. Reichart dumped him immediately, saying that she had wasted 7 years of her life and that she hated him. But Garcia wouldn't be dumped so easily. He became obsessed, showing up at his girlfriend's house unannounced, following her around, and even throwing rocks through the new couple's windows. Finally, on the day of the wedding, Garcia walked up to Gladys with a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, shot her several times. She was pronounced dead by the paramedics and was even buried in her wedding dress. Garcia got life in prison. Number 9. Unstable Cannibal. A man in Indiana has committed a very strange and horrifying crime. He had been accused of killing his ex-girlfriend, then eating some of her organs. In this bizarre case of the unstable cannibal, he got 6 years in jail after being found guilty of some pretty disgusting crimes. Victim's name was Tammy Jo Blanton, and she was discovered dead in her bathtub in September of 2014. At the same time, authorities discovered her ex-boyfriend, Joseph Oberhansley, standing in the kitchen with a skillet, a pair of tongs, and a plate with some bones in it. He had been cutting up his dead ex and getting ready to eat her. According to information that came out during Joseph's court case, he had just been dumped by Tammy shortly before this disturbing incident. After breaking up with them, Tammy was terrified of Joseph and had gone so far as to change her locks and barricade her doors. She was quoted on September 10th as saying, "I'm taking my life back. No one will take me down." But sadly, the next day, her ex-boyfriend did the deed she was so afraid of when he broke into her house and stabbed her 25 times. In court, Joseph claimed that it was actually 2 random men who broke into Tammy's home and attacked her. He also said he had no idea who cut her up and ate her organs. And amazingly, he ended up being ruled incompetent to stand trial. Then later, when the decision was reversed, the judge was forced to declare a mistrial. It would be 6 years after the killing that Joseph's final trial began, and he was found guilty of this terrible murder. Number 8. Life in prison. It looks like Shayna Hubbers is getting life behind bars for the horrible killing of her on-again, off-again boyfriend. She was only recently convicted of the murder, but it happened back in October of 2012. She shot Ryan Poston, 29 years old, and killed him. According to prosecutors, Shayna killed her ex-boyfriend because he was thinking about ending the relationship. Instead of simply letting things end, Shayna loaded her gun and shot the man until he stopped breathing. But in her defense, she argued that she had only been defending herself. She claimed in the courtroom that he had actually attacked her and that she had defended herself with bullets. The jury didn't believe her story for a second. She was actually found guilty of the murder back in 2015, but the conviction had to be overturned because one of the jurors was a convicted felon. In the state of Kentucky, convicted felons are not allowed to sit on juries. The little technicality meant Shayna needed a second trial, and surprise, surprise, the second jury also found her extremely guilty. Number 7. Threatened with a weed whacker. A man threatened his ex-girlfriend with a rather unusual weapon. According to court documents, a man named David Moore went to his ex-girlfriend's house, picked up a motorized weed whacker, and then threatened to attack her with it. The whole mess started back in 2017 when David was served with a protection order forbidding him to go anywhere near his ex-girlfriend. He had been in a relationship with this woman for 3 years, and it did not end nicely. But despite the restraining order, David went to her house anyway. He accused her of keeping some of his belongings that he needed back. He then became enraged for apparently no reason, pushed the woman onto the ground, and then tried to attack her with the weed-eating machine. Luckily, it took him a few seconds to start the machine, which gave his ex-girlfriend enough time to get up and run into her house. But the madness didn't stop there. He went to her car and started smashing it. Then he drove away before the police could arrive. He was later stopped by the cops on State Highway 1, at which point they discovered a glass pipe from smoking meth, a drop saw that had been reported stolen from a primary school construction site, and that he didn't even have a license to drive. Of course, he was sentenced to time behind bars. Number 6. The Gravedigger. Even in death, Julie Mott could not escape her psychotic ex-boyfriend. The poor woman died from cystic fibrosis back in August. She had a funeral in San Antonio, but after the funeral service, somebody went into the funeral home and stole her corpse. The man accused of stealing her corpse is the ex-boyfriend, Bill Wilburn. But this case might not be so cut and dry. Yes, we could be dealing with a grave-digging creep who plans on doing some extremely weird stuff with the corpse of his ex-girlfriend, or that might not be the case at all. Bill actually came forward to deny all accusations. He said that it was somebody else who stole her body from the funeral home. He even said the funeral home could have made a mistake and is trying to cover it up. He says the grieving process has been extremely hard for him, and that he has no motive to steal a rotting corpse. He had actually been dating Julie for 6 years, just until before her death. He had known she was going to pass on eventually because of the cystic fibrosis, but it hit him exceptionally hard when he got the news. According to Sergeant Javier Salazar, whoever stole Julie Mott's remains is still at large. There's absolutely no motive. The funeral home has put up $20,000 for any information leading to the return of the body, and all fingers are pointed directly at Billy Wilburn. Do you think the ex-boyfriend really stole Julie's body? If so, what do you think he's doing with it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Acid attack. Milad Rolfe was a 25-year-old medical student who threw sulfuric acid at his ex-girlfriend while disguised as a black woman. This horrible and shocking crime happened in the United Kingdom. Milad had actually thought it out extremely well. He dressed up in a fat suit, put on makeup, and wore a pair of sunglasses. He also painted himself black to further protect his identity. When the attack happened, even though Milad was standing in the threshold of his ex-girlfriend's home, she couldn't recognize him. She was trying to figure out who was knocking on her door, when suddenly the sulfuric acid was burning her face. The victim of the situation is Rim Alawi, and her life has basically been ruined. She is now blind in her right eye. She can't move her neck properly, and she can't even close both her eyes at the same time. Rim was studying to be a doctor, and now she's hideously disfigured. And all because her ex-boyfriend was way too jealous. Rim had broken up with Milad and was trying to move on with her life. Milad didn't really like that, and so he threw the acid in her face to take away her beauty. That way, nobody would ever want her again. Naturally, the police suspected the ex-boyfriend right away. They found a shopping list at his apartment detailing all the items that he needed to create his disguise. He has since been charged with the horrible attack and given a sentence of 15 years in jail. Number 4. Shot in Florida. Yet another angry ex-girlfriend in America has shot and killed their former lover. This time, it was Crystal Junco. She's been charged for second-degree murder for gunning down her ex-boyfriend outside of a business in South Florida. The victim was 21-year-old O'Neill Linares Alvarez, who was struck by 3 bullets and was pronounced dead at the scene. According to the investigators who arrived shortly after the murder, Crystal had already thought up an excuse for the killing. She told the investigators that while she and O'Neill were arguing, he reached suspiciously to his waistband, which caused her to believe he was trying to grab a firearm. In response, she pulled a gun from her purse and opened fire on the man in the middle of the street. Her story doesn't really check out though, since the police didn't find a gun on the victim. Even if he had been reaching for his waistband, there was nothing there that he could have used as a weapon. This was just an excuse to justify the murder, and it didn't work. Crystal is now awaiting her sentence, which will probably be upwards of 10 years behind bars. Number 3. Frenzied wedding attack. A crazy ex-girlfriend has gone absolutely ballistic. Her name is Stacy Lane, and she broke the arm of her ex-boyfriend's new bride's mother. Michael Lyon and Stacy Lane had 2 children together before their relationship disintegrated, and they stopped seeing one another. Later, Michael met Shelley Kerr. They started dating, and then they planned to marry in October of 2019. Just days before the wedding, Shelley and her mom dropped off Michael's kids at their mother's house. But when the new bride was dropping off the groom's children to his previous girlfriend, the ex flipped out and lost her mind. Stacy and Shelley got into a fight. Stacy hit Shelley with her e-cigarette, and then Stacy went to her car. She pulled a metal hospital crutch from the trunk, then used it to beat the bride and her mother. She had the hospital crutch in both hands and was whacking Shelley as hard as she could with it, trying to crush her head. When Shelley's mom intervened, she too got beaten. Stacy hit the woman's arm so hard that it snapped. Even as Shelley and her mom made a hasty retreat, with both women in serious pain, Stacy used a metal crutch to smash the front of their car and try to break out their windows. This whole mess eventually found its way into the courtroom, where Stacy Lane was given 9 months in jail and charged to complete 75 hours of unpaid work. She was also given a restraining order against Shelley. As for the other people involved, their wedding went on as planned, and everything is just fine with them. Number 2. Freshly brewed tea. A man has been sent to prison after attacking his ex-girlfriend with a mug of tea. Of course, this was a mug of freshly brewed tea. It was so hot that it scalded the woman. But that's not all that happened. Jack Reed also pulled out chunks of her hair, tried to choke her, punched her a few times in the face, and tried to bite her cheek off. Then, after throwing freshly brewed tea on her legs and burning her, he stood above her with a boiling kettle and threatened to pour it all over her head. According to the victim, who hasn't been named for privacy reasons, Jack was actually a pretty pleasant person when sober. It was only when drunk that he became angry and tried to hurt people. The pair had begun a relationship that ended pretty abruptly when he was served with a domestic violence protection order. He accused her of seeing another man, then punched her in the face. Then he went into the kitchen to make himself a cup of tea, but instead got enraged again and threw the boiling tea on her. He's now been sent away for up to 3 years in prison, where he'll be forced to sober up and hopefully learn his lesson. And number 1, late to the party. Damon Burke, 48 years old, has gotten in trouble for trying to kidnap his ex-girlfriend 20 years after they broke up. Talk about holding a grudge. One day, completely out of the blue, Damon showed up to the house that his ex-girlfriend shared with a roommate. He told the roommate that his name was David Moses and that he was a long-lost friend of the woman who lived in the house. He said that he had brought a family heirloom to give her. After a bit of conversation, Damon learned that this roommate worked at a golf course. Oddly enough, he then showed up at that golf course the next day to chat. He walked around with the roommate for a little while, had a friendly conversation, then took him into a maintenance shed, beat him, and stole his keys. David took the victim's vehicle and drove it to the house where his ex-girlfriend was supposed to be. But he didn't get there, thanks to the police that pulled him over on the way. They found a stun gun, a night vision scope, binoculars, handcuffs, brass knuckles, and duct tape. Clearly, he had been planning to do some kidnapping. And as it turned out, Damon had been planning the kidnapping for the past 20 years, ever since his ex first dumped him. Moral of the story here is to be careful who you date. What's your most disastrous experience with an ex? Let us know about it in the comments, and thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Come back again for more shocking tales of true crime. See you next time.